a storm came out of the north over that way, and this massive cloud, bright around the edges with fire constantly flashing around inside it, and in the middle of the fire something that looked like glowing amber, I guess. And then out of it there were like 4 creatures, and they were just strange. They caught the light and they kind of looked like they were glowing too. I mean, next to each one of them, I don't know what was weirder, this part or the creatures, but next to each one of them there was a wheel, like right there on the ground. And these wheels, they shimmered almost like a gemstone, and each one of them, they kind of look like a wheel inside another wheel, and when they moved, they could move in any direction, not like turning, they just moved. And above them, the sky was like this huge dome that was like sparkling, like kind of like crystal, but also like so bright you kind of wanted to like shield your eyes from it. And above that, there was something like a throne, like maybe like sapphire, and on it sat something that looked like a person. That's the only way I know how to describe it.
Last week, the Pentagon released footage it had been sitting on for quite a while. Some of it still a bit grainy, like dashboard camera footage, it seems, but not a blurry iPhone video from someone's backyard. It was footage from military aircraft targeting systems, officially declassified, congressional testimony on the record, and the language the witnesses used to describe what they saw: an ellipsoid, bronze metallic object, materializing out of bright light. These are military pilots, people trained to observe and report with precision, people whose professional credibility depends on accurate description under pressure. And that's what they came back with, which raises a question I think is more interesting than whether you believe them or not. What happens when something shows up that our language wasn't built to describe? Language, it turns out, wasn't built for this, and it's not a new problem. Cognitive scientists have been tracking what happens in that moment for decades. When your brain encounters something new, it doesn't start from scratch. It does a rapid search through everything it already knows and looks for the closest match. And the moment it finds one, it files the new thing there and just moves on. Psychologists call these mental files schemas, a term that John Piaget, who spent his career studying how humans build and update their internal models of the world. A schema is essentially a bucket. Every time you encounter something new, your brain asks, what bucket does this go in? A baseball, a basketball, a hot air balloon, the full moon at night, another planet, filed in the same general neighborhood. Round, three-dimensional, something that moves through space. Scaled, but wildly different. Doesn't matter, close enough. Filed, done. And here's the important part: once the brain files something, it relaxes. It tells itself, I already know what this is, and it stops engaging as hard. The cognitive work, it's finished. The mystery, it's been resolved. Educators actually use this as a tool, but in reverse. Before revealing what something is, a good school teacher will show it to you first. Let you examine it, form impressions, make guesses. Not to make you uncomfortable, but because the brain encodes information more deeply when it has to work for the label rather than just receiving a label. The witness standing in front of something that their memory has no entry for is scrambling to find words on the way out. The student examining something before it's named is building a stronger memory on the way in. Same cognitive architecture, just a different direction. So what happens when you're standing in front of something and the brain runs its search and then comes back empty? No bucket, no match, nothing close enough to file it under. But you still have to describe it. You still have to write your report or give your testimony. Tell someone what you saw. So you do the only thing available. You grab the closest word your vocabulary has, even knowing it doesn't quite fit. It was like a wheel, but inside another wheel. It moved, but not the way things move. It was metallic, but it came out of light. That's not confusion. It isn't imprecision. It's a person doing something genuinely difficult, trying to describe an experience that the existing vocabulary just wasn't built to carry. Here's what tends to happen next. When someone's description, strange, when it strains and grasps and comes back with metallic ellipsoid materializing from light, we treat the strangeness of the language as a signal about the reliability of the person. Well, if they can't describe it clearly, maybe they didn't see it clearly. Maybe they didn't see it at all. But that's possibly backwards. The strangeness of the language isn't a sign that the witness is unreliable. It may be a sign that what they witnessed was genuinely outside the categories human language was built to handle. I mean, after all, we invented the word ellipsoid for objects that approximate an ellipse, but they're not. We invented metallic for surfaces that are sort of like metal, but sort of not. They're approximations. The brain, even in output mode, doing what it does, scanning for the nearest bucket, using what it finds, knowing it still isn't quite right. That's not a credibility problem, it's a category problem. If it's a credibility problem, the witness is confused, mistaken, unreliable. Then the conversation is about the person. If it's a category problem, our existing vocabulary doesn't contain language to describe what they encountered, then the conversation is about the thing. The distinction is simple to state, it's surprisingly hard to actually do. And there's a reason for that. In the 1950s, psychologist Leon Festinger, he developed what he called cognitive dissonance, the discomfort the brain experiences when it's holding two incompatible things at once. When someone hands us a description that doesn't fit our categories, we don't just feel puzzled, we feel sort of uncomfortable, unresolved. The brain is built to resolve that discomfort quickly, and the fastest resolution available is usually binary. Either they're right or they're wrong. Either I believe them or I don't. Either the thing exists or it doesn't. The middle position, curious but uncommitted, open but unresolved, is actually the more difficult cognitive state to maintain. Not because it's intellectually weaker, but because it's psychologically more demanding. The brain has to resist its own pressure to close that loop. The German theologian Rudolf Otto, he wrote about this in 1917 in a book called The Idea of the Holy. He was trying to describe what he called numinous, his term for the experience of encountering something completely outside your categories. Something that compels a response but resists classification. He called it mysterium tremendum, this tremendous, mysterious thing. The mystery that is simultaneously overwhelming and irresistible. Otto's argument was that this kind of encounter is the root of religious experience and that it is fundamentally characterized by the inadequacy of ordinary language to contain it. The numinous, by definition, exceeds what concepts and words were built for. What's striking is that Otto and Festinger wrote decades apart from completely different disciplines, and they're pointing at the same thing. When something exceeds your categories, the pressure to resolve it fast, to file it, to name it, to decide, it is immense. And the honest response, the one that actually stays with the experience, is harder and rarer than we like to think. Is it possible to stay curious without immediately deciding? To take someone's account seriously without being required to either fully believe or fully dismiss? The answer shapes how we respond to a lot more than just Pentagon footage. Speaking of Pentagon footage, What you heard at the beginning of this episode, it actually wasn't from the Pentagon. Wheels within wheels, a crystal vault, fire, something that moved in a direction without turning. That description was written in an ancient text about 2,600 years ago. It comes from the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament in chapter 1 of the book of Ezekiel. Ezekiel was a priest. He was in exile in Babylon, taken from Jerusalem when the city fell, living in a foreign country, in a period when the entire architecture of his faith had been dismantled. And he saw something, a wheel within a wheel. When they moved in any of the four directions without turning. Over their heads, these creatures that he saw as well, the likeness of an expanse shining like awe-inspiring crystal. Is Ezekiel describing a spacecraft? I don't think so. But I'm not sure that's the right question. What I think he's describing is an encounter with something that exceeds every category he had. His brain, it ran the search. The buckets came back empty. And he did what people do. He assembled the closest available words, knowing they weren't quite right, and he committed them to the page. A wheel within a wheel. The geometry of something rotating in a way that, well, wheels don't exactly rotate, but moving and turning, but kind of without moving and turning. Motion that didn't follow the physics he knew, but sort of looked like a wheel. Shining like awe-inspiring crystal. A surface that caught the light in a way that sounds sort of familiar. And Ezekiel isn't an outlier in modern or ancient times. In the book of Daniel, chapter 7, describes a throne of flames with wheels of burning fire, an ancient of days with thousands attending. Structured almost identical to Ezekiel's vision, fire, wheels, figures that don't quite obey the rules of the physical world. And then there's the book of Revelation written by John. The book of Revelation is the last book of the Christian Bible. John wrote it while exiled on the island of Patmos. Another exile, another person whose world had been dismantled, another person who saw something and was left searching for words to describe it. In this, he describes a city. He calls it New Jerusalem. And in describing it, he does what Ezekiel did. He searches for words to convey what he is seeing. Words that don't quite explain. There's 12 gates in this city, and the gates are pearls, each gate made of a single giant pearl. Is there a pearl large enough to be a city gate? Not one that John knows of. He's not writing geology. He's assembling the largest, most luminous, most singular thing his vocabulary contains and then blowing it up big enough to be a gate. Because the thing he's trying to gesture towards is larger and more luminous and more singular than anything he can name. The streets of the city, he calls them pure gold. They were so pure they were transparent as glass. Transparent gold doesn't exist. Not in any metallurgy John had access to. He's not confused. He's doing the only thing available, taking two properties, precious and pure, and pushing them to their limits, knowing the result sounds like a contradiction, knowing it doesn't quite work, but he's going to write it down anyway. Different writers, centuries between themselves. In this case, exile is a common denominator, and in these cases, the text does something theologically significant that we often miss when we're arguing about whether it's literal or not. It admits its own limitation. It assembles the best available words and signals through the strangeness of the result, but to demand that language be more precise is to ask more from the text than the text was ever able to give us. But here's what I keep thinking about. The category problem. The experience of standing in front of something your vocabulary wasn't built for. It's not even unique to UFOs. And it isn't unique to ancient prophets. What about a child who doesn't have words for something horrible that's been done to them? Who describes something in the language available to them, it's all they have, but it sounds strange or wrong to an adult ears because the experience behind it is outside anything a child was given language for? Or what about someone from a small village trying to describe New York City to someone who has never left the village? How do you describe 10 million people in one place? How do you describe skyscrapers or explain subways, these trains that run underground that thousands of people ride in, that arrives and departs at particular locations on a particular schedule? What does that sound like? Described in the vocabulary of someone who's never seen a train or never seen a skyscraper, it might sound a little crazy. These are the same problem. Someone is handing someone else an account of something genuine, something real in their experience, and they're using the closest words available. And we have a choice what to do with that. Is the immediate impulse to decide whether they're credible rather than to ask what they actually encountered? What would it look like to hold the curious position, to take someone's account seriously, to stay with its strangeness without being required to either fully accept it or fully dismiss it? And is that harder than it sounds? Not because the account is difficult to evaluate, but because, as Fessinger would predict, the brain is already pressing us towards resolution. I want to be precise about what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that UFO reports are spiritual revelations. And I'm not saying Ezekiel and Daniel are visited by extraterrestrials. I'm not collapsing those categories into each other. What I'm saying is that in both cases, the ancient priest in Babylon exile and the Navy pilot in a debriefing room, a person is trying to describe something that exceeded the category their language was built around. And in each of these cases, they tried to describe it anyway. Something like gleaming amber, a wheel within a wheel, a bronze ellipsoid, a metal object materializing out of bright light. I think what makes UFO or UAP reports so unsettling for believers and skeptics alike is that they sit in a category our culture doesn't have good infrastructure for. Is it science fiction? Is it a religious experience? Is it a hallucination? Otto had a word for that: otherworldly. Not in the casual sense, but in the precise sense of belonging to another order. Something the tremendous mysterious describes not as impossible, but as exceeding the available categories and language to describe it. The oldest library we have is full of people who ran into the same wall. Writers who stood in front of something that wouldn't quite fit, and they just kept writing anyway, assembling crystal and fire and wheels within wheels and transparent gold, because silence felt like the worst possible response to what they had witnessed. Maybe the question isn't whether we believe the witnesses. Maybe we should be asking what it says about the encounter, about the thing being described. What does it mean when words can't describe something? What does it say about our limited experience? And what does it say about the possibility of the thing being described? Could it be real? Could it be that the language is lacking, that the object or entity is real, while also being bigger than words can explain? The next time you hear a strange story from a pilot, a prophet, a child, a stranger, when you read it in an ancient text, when someone describes something that doesn't seem to make sense or seems otherworldly, maybe the issue isn't the person's credibility. Maybe it's the lack of language to describe what they're actually trying to tell us. If something in this episode opened a door for you, or if you think I got something wrong, I generally would love to hear it in the comments. I read them all. And don't forget to subscribe and click the like button. There's more coming. Different territory next week. Same types of questions underneath them all. I'm David. This is Deeper Theology.